This is Second Shift.
Hey everybody, welcome to Second Shift. Mike Verkest, Ratusani, back at it again. What seems like we were just together doing this very thing.
Seems so recent.
Yeah, so recent. So recent, in fact. It's more recent than you could even possibly imagine.
That's right. Through the magic of broadcasting.
Yeah, exactly. It's really good. So, buddy, guess what? I'm a student again.
You're a student again?
Yes.
Are you trying to get your GED finally?
Finally, right? Yeah, if you ask Christofoli, that's what he was saying, jackass. No, I'm working on my bachelor's finally. 48 years old and figured, well, it's better late than never, maybe. I don't know, I guess. So we're doing it. It's good. I'm excited. I've been secretly so excited to get going with this, but at the same time dreading it because I'm like, oh God, I got work and Flight Virginia, and I got school, and I got family, and I got Fire Dog, I got all these things going. How will I ever manage? Turns out, so far so good. It's been one day. But I woke up again this morning and had all my toes and fingers, and so like the whole world didn't fall apart because I'm doing school now. So that's good. Yeah. I'm doing a EMS risk management course. Nice. And a EMS communications, in which of course you have the proverbial icebreaker that you have to do with your colleagues online. So did all that stuff, and that was pretty good. But getting into the nitty gritty, man, I mean, we're going back to the 1960s, talking about the white paper and how and the bill that Nixon passed in 1972. And how that affected communications and got the 911 system started. So it's really good to go back and like just refresh on a lot of these things that, I didn't really pay a lot of attention. I mean, it's sort of in there, but I hadn't really thought about for a long time. I'm in my 25th year of doing this. And so it was good to get back there and really see how some of those foundational things that they did so long ago. I mean, they were ahead of their time with a lot of this stuff, right? Especially when it comes to the communication piece, like trying to orient dispatch centers and trying to get, a number for people to use, right? 911 wasn't the first number, they started off with an 800 number that people could call. And it was just really interesting to get back in there and try to look at that stuff. So it's being fun being a student.
About regionalization of emergency healthcare too, way back then. Yeah. What a crazy idea that was. Yeah. Yeah. So you're getting your, did I see it was through Western? Is that right?
Eastern Oregon. Yes, I'm a Mountaineer, buddy. Get it right. Eastern Oregon Mountaineers. They do have a football team, although
they do. I actually know somebody that played for it.
Oh, wow. Nice.
There you go.
We're going to talk a little bit about college football as we get going here. But before we get too much further into it, over the last few days, we got some pretty disappointing news that fellow medical director, EMS icon, a member of the Eagles, had suddenly passed away.
Yeah. My friend Craig Manifold. I know Jeff put out a little video tribute a couple days ago, but we wanted to make sure to get this to talk about him briefly. But I've known Craig, I don't even know, for a long time. And Craig was the EMS medical director in San Antonio. Like you said, was one of the more original Eagles, but very involved in national EMS issues. And like I said, I've known Craig for a very long time, and we worked together because he was so close with NAEMT. He was NAEMT's national medical director. And when I was president of NAMSP, he transitioned into that role. And then as NAMSP's advocacy guy, we worked together a lot. And he and I worked together on the DA bill together. And for anybody of you who've listened to us for any length of time know that that's one of the accomplishments in my sort of career that I'm really very proud of. And was really kind of our first big foray into advocacy for NAMSP and EMS. And he was right there. He was a partner. He was chair of ASEP's EMS committee at the time when we first started working, and then ended up in the NAMT side. And so we wrote stuff together. We talked about it together. He got to testify before Congress about the bill. He and they managed to schedule the hearing during the middle of my vacation in Hawaii for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So I missed the congressional hearing. So he did it with Brent. Just a great guy who, served EMS. He had a giant heart, served EMS, and then served the EMS provider. So was a big advocate for EMS practitioners. That's how NEMT really felt like he was a good fit for them. Yeah. But also, the largest group of EMS providers in the federal government is in Homeland Security, and he worked with them.
He was a brigadier general.
A brigadier general in the Air Force.
Yeah, I had no idea. And he was kind of a big deal on the medical services side.
Yeah. But most importantly, one of the kindest, nicest men I've ever worked with. He was a big guy. And again, super well known, everybody in the industry. And so you'd think he'd be like this sort of intimidating figure, just this giant heart of gold, really calm, just anytime you would be with him, you would just get this sense of like, this is just a nice man. That's what he put out there. And had a cardiac arrest last weekend suddenly and passed away.
Yeah.
And just a big loss. Really, really sad. Made me sad. Talked to a lot of people over this week who all felt the same way. I had a friend, I texted him, I won't say who it was, but one of my friends is like, I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, fuck no, I'm not okay. This is terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible on so many fronts. It was unexpected. He's a young guy. Really just, just made a difference in our profession. So I'm really sad about it.
So, obviously we're definitely thinking about his family and all the people that he served with, and, the EMS providers and even the EMS medical directors that are sort of coming up and really looked at him as a mentor and a friend and someone that they could bounce ideas off of. And it's just all gone now. So it's just real tragic.
It is. It's hard.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I mean, a lot of people reached out to me, people that are acquaintances, people that I've met along the way,
sure,
but who I consider to be, friendly, that I like, but not like anybody I spent a ton of time with. Yeah. Just reached out and said, here's my phone number. Call me if you want to talk to somebody. Same thing, I've talked to a bunch of my friends who are, so as a family, as an EMS family, we got to take care of each other. And the context of what's been going on for the last 6 months, I think also makes this a lot harder because it's just one more thing.
It's one more thing.
And I guess I'm glad I'm not numb to it. I mean, I really, but we got to take care of each other. We got to reach out to each other. These kinds of times when people are sad can be really high risk times in a community, and we should just make sure that we're all available for each other. And if you feel it, talk to somebody that talk to me, talk to Mike. You can reach out to us. Even if you don't know, even if you've never talked to me before in your life, we're here to provide that, but don't kind of sit in your aloneness about this.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
So thinking about him and his family.
So that's sad. But you know what? Here's my Manhattan. I toasted him the next night I came home from work. But let's celebrate. Thanks, Craig. We love you. We miss you. We appreciate you. Here's to you, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, buddy, back to the situation.
Yes, the situation.
It seems like it gets worse as far as numbers go.
Well,
then we get a little reprieve. Oh man, it looks good. And then not so good, and then a little better, and then not so good. And we're in a not so good time again. Why do you think that is? Is it people just don't care anymore?
I think
are they getting used to it?
I think people, I worry that people don't care. I worry that people are being a little, it's how do you have to find that happy medium of being careful but not panicking, right?
Yeah, of course.
Keep calm and carry on, but don't screw the pooch.
Yeah, it just seems like, it's becoming another whole political thing. People don't want to wear their mask. People don't want to, not congregate. People don't, it just seems like there's just super simple things that people can do. You don't have to stay locked into your house. Just wear your mask.
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable flying, don't get on a plane.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just seems so, to me, it seems reasonable. But then to other people, it's the end of the world and we're taking their civil liberties away because their kid can't play sixth grade football.
You're going to get me started on politics and then I'm going to piss off half our listeners.
Well, I don't want that, but it's just like, don't.
But the reality is that it's politics. We have the super spreader in chief flying around in his plane, having little rallies. But we have other events too, right? We're the date, we're 18 days from the start of our fires, which also happen to be after a holiday where people get together. And then today, Oregon had its highest number of positive cases in history.
Yep.
And Oregon has been in the best one. The only states that have been better than Oregon are the states with like 3 people in it. Right? Who, even though if they have 3 people, they still get 2 senators, but that's a different issue. But
this guy,
I got to tell you. But the point is that while there have been some people who have had issue with how we've handled it, we locked down quicker and we've been slower to come out. But we had a holiday weekend followed by a lot of situations where people were congregating because they were in shelters.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can freaking do about that. And now 18 days later, we have the highest numbers we've ever had. Yeah. And some people argue, well, you're testing more. Our testing's actually down.
It's way down because, by the way, a lot of those labs were evacuated because of the fires.
Right. And we had like an 8% positivity rate on the yesterday or 2 days ago. And meanwhile, Florida seems to be doing great because they just removed all restrictions from restaurants today.
Perfect.
Yeah. Here's the dirty little secret that it's fucking infectious disease. And it's still in our community. And every human to human interaction is a dice roll.
Yeah.
And you have a choice. You could make it more likely or less likely. And the way you make it less likely is by wearing masks, the data is really clear that if you have a person with an infection and they wear a mask, the amount of stuff they spew out is significantly lower. But I mean, and you know, if you're going to roll the dice, wear a mask and understand, like, I still haven't been in a restaurant. I did eat at a McDonald's, but I was in and out in 10 minutes. So, yeah. I mean, I won't go to a restaurant where I won't go I try to stay. I haven't gotten my hair cut, right?
I know. We were talking about that earlier. You're almost to ponytail land.
Almost, not quite. But the point being, you know, I go into a situation and I ask myself, what would happen if there was a super spreader in this? And if they're wearing a mask and I'm wearing a mask and I can be there for less than 15 or 20 minutes, then I think it's fine. But if there's going to be people unmasked and I'm going to be in the space for longer than 20 minutes, then I don't consider it necessarily safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's good. And I think that seems, I don't understand what's so unreasonable about that. No. But as far as EMS goes, I still think the tenets remain the same, right? We know our PPE works. Keep doing that. We're in this long haul now where what I'm afraid of is just people getting complacent. And I don't want that to work because we know the PPE is doing a good job.
Right.
So
all of your patients are infectious. Period. And the problem, you know, is interesting because I was talking to one of my fire departments. I was down there helping them with an academy, new hire academy, the other day, teaching a class. We were inside. We opened the door. Everybody's got their own 6-foot table to themselves. I'm at least 6 feet away from everybody. And so we're doing, you know, trying to maintain those distances as best as we can.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I was hanging with the crew in the bay, far apart from everybody. But we were talking about these things and kind of same thing. It's just like, they're making fun of my hair. They're like, the salons are open. I'm like, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where if there's a single super spreader, I'm going to catch it. But there's a
99.9% chance you're going to be just fine.
99.9%. Yes, I've seen that lately.
Yes,
even though I'm a 53-year-old man with asthma. But
and you have an at-risk person that lives in your household.
That's right.
But you'll be just fine. See,
I have a 79-year-old mother-in-law who lives in my house. Yes,
it just drives me crazy. Like it's just not always about you. People just can't do it.
Yeah, and what's interesting is they've locked down in Australia in I don't know. We're terrible. I don't know if they have provinces or states there, but Victoria, there's been no new cases in like 2 weeks. And you know what's interesting is a lot of people say if we had locked down as a country a long time ago, like fully locked down, we could be in a much better situation now. You know, the point is you lock down to a point where there's no more community spread. And then you can trace and isolate. But the other challenge. So this is what I wanted to talk about. Or mention. So we were talking about it with a couple of my firefighters at Lake Oswego Fire, and what even they didn't quite understand is that the data on contagiousness, if you will, is that you are most contagious the day that you have symptoms or the day before. So if you think about, and that's what makes this so dangerous. It's not even the asymptomatic, but it's the pre-symptomatic or early symptomatic. I've got a little scratchy throat. I had a patient who came in with something totally minor, and at the end of her time with me, she's like, "Oh, I have a slightly scratchy throat. Could you test me?" And we didn't have her at coronavirus high risk because she didn't have any of those complaints.
Yeah.
We even asked her, do you have a sore throat? She said no. But at the end, she's like, I have a slightly scratchy throat. Can you test me? And because our policy in the emergency department is all patients wear a mask, all providers wear a mask, it was still considered a low risk exposure when she tested positive. And that was a month ago. So, I certainly didn't get a positive. But the point being is that the challenge with this disease versus the flu, sort of peak contagiousness of the flu is after you are already sick. Peak contagiousness of this is either the day before you get sick or the day you get sick. And that's what makes it so hard.
Yeah.
And early on, I wasn't a big mask guy. And it's the data that shows me that if somebody is infected, wearing a mask significantly reduces the amount of virus they put out. That has made me a mask guy. That's why we all need to wear masks. And because we might have it and we won't know it.
Well, this is what I'll say. If you're listening and you're a mask hater, send Dr. Sani a tweet. I'd like to see that conversation. But speaking of I guess, improvements or adjustments or whatever, college football, your conference and mine
are back.
They're back November 6th, at least for us, I think it was.
October 24th for the Big Ten.
Oh, really? Yeah, we're, I think, a week later.
No, a couple weeks.
I'm super excited. Yeah, I think it's November 7th. I just saw a ESPN interview with Mario Cristobal. I guess all the team is completely jacked and excited, and they're going to be getting ready to, I guess they're going to be doing daily testing on people, sort of almost like the NFL model, whatever that means. I did watch some, what is that show called on HBO? The NFL? Come on. Where they go and follow the teams around.
Hard Knocks?
Hard Knocks. God bless. Watch some Hard Knocks, and they just do this little, if you're watching a video, they just do this little nasal thing here. They don't even jam it back, and that's their daily testing. But nonetheless, they've done a pretty good job with that, and the numbers seem pretty good. So I don't know. We'll see. We won't be able to go watch, but at least we'll be able to be home and watch, and I'm excited about that.
I'm excited. I mean, there's two things I think that made this possible. One is a good thing. One is actually a bad thing. I think that there has been some improvement in testing availability. The NBA's spit test seems to be really good. So they're doing a saliva test on a daily basis, and the NBA has shown that the bubble works. But, one of the things that I have a problem with is that any activity that you do that will knowingly increase spread during a pandemic, I think is a moral and ethical problem. And the reality is that right now, colleges have done such a shitty job with it that I don't think adding football in changes that equation at all. And in reality, when you look at from what my sources tell me, and I have some really inside sources, no, not really, but I have some sources that tell me that like at Michigan, the football team is basically being isolated. So even though the students are being total shitheads and they're as if they were like 20-year-olds. Yeah, that's what they are. And that the big hotspot, a lot of the big hotspots right now around the country are college campuses. I don't think that football teams are necessarily going to be that. And if they can sort of keep them isolated and then do the daily testing, I don't think that they will be increasing the spread of a pandemic virus. I also think that, I think that's the big thing. So that's why I have mixed feelings about it. But I part of it is because colleges have been so shitty about it that they couldn't possibly make it worse. My approach has always been that to get the things that we like back, we need to do a better job in treating this virus, not bring things that we like back and hope that the virus just doesn't pay attention, because the virus doesn't care. The virus doesn't care what your politics are, and it doesn't really care what you think. So you can sit there and look at numbers and say, we last episode we talked about the bullshit 9,000 that people were trying to spend. The virus,
right?
Y'all can say whatever the fuck you want. The virus is just going to do its thing. Europe is in a resurgence. They're sort of in a second wave. They had opened things up, and I think people they're going to start locking down. I worry that that's going to happen here in mid to late October in this country. I think, and I wonder if I've argued that we shot our political wad in March. Looking back at the numbers in March, it was good that we did, but I think people are not going to be willing to lock back down, or more importantly, certain politicians are not going to be willing to step up and lock things down. I actually think our governor will. She's not up for re-election. This is not a state that is considered at one way or the other in terms of kind of election politics. So I think that if we have to go back to phase 1 or phase 0, I don't think she'll have any problem doing that, and that'll piss off a lot of right-wing nut jobs. I mean, did I say that out loud?
Hey, buddy, again, I'm Republican, but there's a difference.
Yeah.
Right-wing nut job.
You're not a right-wing nut job.
No,
people can disagree.
Yeah, for sure.
But we
don't disagree on a million things.
I don't think we disagree on hardly anything.
Yeah, I mean, not really. I'm pretty moderate. Like, I just want people to be nice and do the right thing.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I think shooting a gun is fun. So there you go.
Yeah, we're gonna go do that.
Yeah, someday.
We've been planning on doing that, but every time we plan on it, then something bad happens.
Yeah, well, it's because something bad happens every fucking day.
Yeah, that's true.
Super excited for college football. And
totally. I'm so excited. I mean, we're only going to get like 6 games. So one of the questions they asked was like, do you think the Pac-12 should like be eligible for the playoff if you're only playing 6 games in a championship?
Yes, they should be.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
well, but so here's the other thing, right? So let's look at how football's been going. Everybody's like, oh, part of the argument is it's been successful so far, right? It's mid-September, late September, and we've had college football now for the month, since the beginning of the month. And when I turn on the TV on Saturday, there's college football game. Let me ask you a question, because I just learned this today. What percentage of FBS games have been canceled or postponed because of coronavirus?
10% maybe?
33%.
Oh, wow.
1 out of every 3 FBS game has either been canceled or postponed because of a coronavirus outbreak. So don't feel bad about if you play 7 games in the Pac-12, you will play about the same as most people.
Yeah,
I mean, so far, the University of Houston has had 4 first games canceled already this year.
Well, Texas is a bit of a shit show, right, Jarvis?
Yeah. So, I think it's gonna. I think let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
But the only other thing I have a problem with is you have these football players are getting tested every day. College students aren't getting tested every day. And so that's the other thing that sort of bothers me about this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know for Eastern Oregon, which I am a student at, if you didn't pay attention to the first 5 minutes.
A Mountaineer, is that correct?
Yeah, Mountaineer, buddy. Mountaineers. I got some swag on order, so I'll be able to rep my university. Anyway.
Can we go to a game at some point?
Did you have a what?
Should we go to a game at some point?
Maybe.
We can podcast from the game.
Yeah, we can podcast from one. But, they've tested about 1,100 students, and 10% of those have tested positive just in the first week back to school.
Right.
So pretty interesting stuff there.
Yeah. But they're testing football players every single day.
Every single day, yeah.
And they're housing them and feeding them.
Yeah.
It's just a different world, Yeah. It's just like, our Portland Timbers won the MLS's back tournament, right? I don't know if you know that because you don't follow soccer.
I did. They won what now?
So when the Major League Soccer came back, they had a tournament in the bubble in Orlando.
Okay.
And they won that tournament. The Portland Timbers did.
Nice. And good for them.
Outstanding. Enjoyed it. Watched every game. The Timbers were getting tested every single day by the same company that was doing the community testing in Orlando. The turnaround for test results, if you were an MLS soccer player, was a day. The turnaround, if you were living in that community, was 7 days. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Nope. Agreed.
Yeah. And it's the same company. That means that when your grandma went to get tested, some 20-year-old soccer player's swab was getting put in front of hers because they paid more money. And that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, we'll see what the situation does. But from an EMS perspective, you just got to continue. Every patient could be a super spreader. Put them all on a freaking mask.
What exactly is a super spreader? I've heard you say that term a few times. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, that's interesting. So the CDC talks about these super spreader events, and actually, when you look at the SARS-1 episode in Toronto, what they found in SARS-1 was that there were a few people who were these super spreaders that, for whatever reason, had high viral load. shedding accounted for a large percentage of cases. And what the CDC has said in their, if you read in the MMWR, here, I got one right here, because I'm a nerd.
I know what that is. It's something weekly report.
The Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report.
Yep.
So this is the CDC's weekly publication, and they have some very interesting cases, scenarios around the spread of coronavirus. And the one that got a lot of press was in late March was the choir in Washington.
Right.
But they have multiple scenarios where they have multiple individual investigations where basically one person showed up and they weren't symptomatic, and like 8 or 10 or 12 people who were in this location, whether there was a wedding, there was one where there was a funeral, there was one that they had a case report on that was a funeral and a wedding where everybody in the family got together.
Oh boy.
Over like 5 days, and people who weren't even there, removed from the first person who was infected died. But there's this super spreader phenomenon where there are just some people who seem to be shedding more virus than others and seem to be more infectious, and we don't understand it. And this is very well described in SARS-1, and the CDC talks about these super spreader events also with coronavirus, with COVID-19 and SARS-2. And that's, to me, there's a great Korean CDC paper that shows how everybody in a restaurant got infected because the person who was the source patient was sitting literally at the outflow from the ventilation system in this restaurant.
Oh, so it was passing over them and just hitting everybody.
Yep, and everybody who was and like 90% of the people in the restaurant for like a half who'd been there for longer than 20 minutes got infected. So those are the papers that I read that make me go, I just don't want to put my hair in that situation. So,
all right, let's jump into the next category here. We're going to talk about, again, ketamine. All right, so ketamine, back to our last episode, you heard us describe a situation in which an Aurora City Council person was trying to put a ban, at least while there was an investigation going on, to the use of ketamine for these paramedics that are in Colorado. Well, as it would turn out, they voted unanimously to temporarily ban first responders from using ketamine to subdue suspects during arrests. Just so weird. Decision comes as the city has faced increasing scrutiny over the death of Elijah McClain, a 23-year-old black man who died after he was given the drug in police custody. So, the decision to temporarily ban ketamine comes after the Colorado Society of Anesthesiologists urged the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to suspend ketamine waiver program until the department has completed its review of the drug for sedation and treating excited delirium, which we'll get to in a minute. CBS Denver reports that the organization said it opposes using ketamine for incapacitation in a law enforcement setting. And then there was a quick quote that says, our concern stems from the reported large number of uses of ketamine for this purpose in the past 2.5 years.
Bullshit.
More than 902 uses, reported doses that are equal or greater to that used to produce general anesthesia, and the high reported complication rate, 24% in 2019, including one death, the group said. So,
it's awesome.
They did it. They legislated the patient care. Congratulations.
Yep. I think it's good. I think that legislators who have no medical background should pass laws telling physicians how to provide care.
Well, 100% agree.
Yeah.
And so
sorry.
What are you dying about?
Of course don't think it's a good idea.
It's the dumbest thing ever.
But it's about the narrative. It's about seizing control of the narrative. It's about telling a story, right? Data doesn't move people, stories do.
Exactly.
And our response to a lot of this has continuously been, we are the scientists and we know better. Well, how fucking well is that going with coronavirus? It's not. And so to me, that's the biggest problem, is one, not recognizing the moment that we're in, not recognizing why this has become an issue, not acknowledging those things before stepping up and telling people why this is a bad idea. Yeah. And I don't say this just as some sort of kind of, liberal tree hugger. I also say this as a person who's testified before legislative committees and got my ass handed to me because I didn't have the narrative that, I got to testify after a bunch of crying moms about why it was a bad idea to legislate healthcare, and I didn't have a fucking chance.
Yeah.
And so understanding the politics and how stories drive decision making much more so than expertise and facts. Yeah. And to be quite honest, it's a both sides thing, right? It's not, as a person who clearly has one side in the political world, to look at what happened to Elijah McClain and say that the problem was ketamine is just wrong. It's a wrong conclusion.
Yes.
But there were a lot of things that seem to have happened that didn't, there were ways to seize that. There were ways to have that narrative be different. And also maybe there may have been ways to take better care of him also. I don't know the details in the actual case other than what's been in the lay press.
Right.
So I'm not even going to begin to, but I mean, if you think politics don't matter towards healthcare, I mean, clearly you're wrong.
Exactly. And then we were able to see a swift response from NAEMSP.
They're working on some other response.
Yep. And so on September 1st, NAEMSP put out a very nice position statement that basically said that a recent joint statement made last week by the American Society of Anesthesiologists and the American College of Emergency Physicians, along with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's announcement to review the state's ketamine waiver program, are causing serious concern among NAEMSP providers. And I love what Dr. Tan said. EMS providers are skilled professionals following medical protocols set forth by their physician medical director. These protocols and standing orders of an EMS medical director are, by definition, used for patients. The suggestion that ketamine is routinely being used for non-medical purpose is dangerously misleading. And then they finally they wrapped it up with how NAMSP has offered their expertise to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environmental Task Force.
Yeah. So the bullshit about all this that actually has me really pissed off is fucking anesthesiologists and this idea and the statement that they put out that says, the fact that they say that we don't think ketamine should be used in a law enforcement situation. Well, guess what? Neither does any MSP. Neither do EMS medical directors. But the fact that you put that out there, they even said it's happening frequently. That's a total bullshit lie. Yeah. And to have another physician society come out with that, especially a group that sits on their asses and does crossword puzzles all day.
Oh boy, shots fired. Jim DeCanto.
Oh, that's right. Hey, Jim, how are you? But you know what I'm saying? I mean, and realistically, how many Jim DeCantos are there?
Yeah, true.
There are definitely some anesthesiologists who spend time on EMS. Yeah. I'm not going to say there are none. Yeah. I absolutely know some. And they would probably agree with me that we're not using ketamine to subdue people for law enforcement. Right. But again, coming back around to messaging, remember we talked about this a couple of years ago with Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
And it was the same problem there. It appeared that we were doing the ketamine at law enforcement's request to the layperson. And so I think part of it is on us to make sure that that's really clear as to why we're doing it. And if we are doing it at law enforcement's request on an individual level, you need to fucking stop. But to, and then finally, I mean, we use droperidol, right? I mean, the same exact thing.
The old days.
It's used for people who are in excited delirium. And the other thing that was really pissed me off about what the anesthesiologist said is they put excited delirium in quotes.
Right, like it's not a real thing.
So I invite one of those anesthesiologists to put excited delirium in quotes to come spend some time in a 6-foot by 8-foot box with a person who has overdosed on methamphetamine, and to see how real they think excited delirium is at that point.
Agreed.
Reasonable.
We should make that a standing offer anytime they want to come out.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's frustrating on a lot of levels, but I think we have something to learn about the ability to seize the narrative and the ability to tell the story in a way, not lying. You're not lying, but you need to tell the story in a way that tells the actual real story. Because if you don't, somebody else will, and they will either lie or more commonly misperceive the story and tell it in a way that creates a false narrative.
There's a lot of that going on right now.
I know.
All right, next on the old agenda is there's a couple of papers we're going to talk about. We're not stealing Jarvis's thunder. Calm down, everybody. We're We're not going to do that, but we want to highlight a couple things. And actually, we want to do a little hat tip for, I say Jarvis, but, I do that one with him over there, that other one, that other one.
Yeah.
And so that other one's going to be covered pretty thoroughly here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll just do a quick glaze on it. But there's two we want to talk about. One is the TXA and TBI, which is the one that Dr. Jarvis and Dr. Pickett and myself, and we're going to be going through that and doing the usual EMS Lighthouse Project podcast process on that one. So we'll be breaking that one down pretty good. So I'm excited to hear that. So we'll talk a little bit about that one. But really, another one came out just this last week. That is this was in JAMA as well. And it's the Association of Intra-Arrest Transport versus Continued On-Scene Resuscitation with Survival to Hospital Discharge among patients with out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. Now, that is a long title, but it's kind of funny. Like, we haven't transported cardiac arrests in like a long time. But
we transport more than you would think, but when I look at the numbers, we still transport them. But our definite philosophy in our system,
we transport them in arrest.
We do. It still happens.
Huh?
Makes me go. That's the face that I make. Why do you transport that person?
Like, I don't know how many times we can beat that. That's not the right one. Like, discuss that and train on that.
But
anyway.
We really have probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And those of you who listen to our annual protocol review update, we really focused in the last few years on taking care of arrests where they happen.
Yep.
Not transporting people intra-arrest because of the quality of care suffers and because there's no benefit at the end of the transport.
Right. What are they going to do? Nothing.
And unless you're going to put somebody on ECMO or take them to the cath lab, there's really no benefit.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that we started training it, and until we put it in the protocol that basically you don't freaking move until one of these things happens.
One of two things is going to happen.
People were still doing it, and but that's what we've done, I think, for a few years. And so this paper, which was in JAMA, Brian Grunow was, and I don't know him, but I certainly know some of the other authors on this. Tom Ray.
Seattle.
Yep, from Seattle. Jim Menegazzi, one of my mentors from Pittsburgh.
Kudenchuk, Seattle.
Christian Valancourt, who I wrote a couple papers with, or when I say I wrote, meaning he wrote, and I said, yes, looks good.
Oh my gosh. I just noticed that Dana's name was on here.
Yeah, I just noticed that too.
Oh my gosh.
Our friend Dana Zive, who passed away about a year ago.
Yeah.
Neil Richmond, who we know, another medical director. So a lot of these folks are people that we've worked with in the past, but they basically did so a couple of things about it. I mean, it's not a prospective randomized controlled trial.
Indeed.
We did not go on calls and roll some dice. If you're a D&D person, a 20-sided dice, and if it was odd, you stayed, and even you went. This was a retrospective review of the ROC database, but looking at 44,000 cardiac arrests. And what they basically found was that if you were transported to the hospital intra-arrest, and this is all comers, the entire data set.
Right.
So witnessed VF, unwitnessed asystole, same pool, right? If you were transported intra-arrest to the hospital, your chance of neurologically intact survival was 2.9%. And if you were not transported to the hospital until you had ROC, so you had on-scene resuscitation, then favorable neurologic survival was 7%. So basically more than double survival improvement by running with neuro intact by running the cardiac arrest where it happens.
Yep.
If you don't do neuro intact, it was 4% versus 8.5%. So again, just kind of, I guess, more evidence that the idea is that we've espousing, I think, through our protocols and how is that especially if you're a high performing system, we do a good job with cardiac arrest. And the best chance the patient has is if you don't move them and do bad compressions while you're doing all that shit. If you take care of the arrest where it happens, provide high quality compressions and high quality advanced life support, that there looks like their chances of survival to discharge neuro intact are basically doubled. Yeah. And again, so there are a lot of people like, this is retrospective review. Absolutely. This is not the highest level of evidence. If the standard of care in the community everywhere was to load and go, then you could make an argument that while this raises the question as to whether or not that's the right standard, it's not compelling evidence because it's not the highest level of evidence. I can also argue that we have already independently determined that that's our methodology and that this provides more support to that method.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that you summed it up perfect. Like that makes a ton of sense. And there's obviously, I saw Peter Antevy. Jesus, you'd think I would get that straight after 5 or 6 years. But he's obviously a firm believer, and I think he probably has his data that would prove that it's the same for the pediatric possible.
Absolutely.
And probably actually even to more extent, I would guess.
I just saw a monograph, not a paper, but a monograph that made that same argument that and then when you think about, and they made the argument that why do kids cardiac arrest? Because of airway respiratory problems. So the worst thing you can do is load and go and not manage the airway. And the best thing you can do is manage the airway on site correctly. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to intubate them all, right? Because we know that that may have some there may be some controversy about that, but you certainly can manage the airway, whether it's through proper BVM or supraglottic or intubation correctly. And that'll get you much better results, I think, than just loading and going.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Another one of the papers that came out this last week, finally, after being delayed a little bit, was the ROC study, the TXA in TBI study, which I was involved in here, which was very exciting. And the abstract actually came out months ago. And I did a short Flight Bridge Ed podcast on that. It was actually a funny story. That was the first time I had ever been on a podcast, was with Eric, telling him we were doing this study and all about it. And then I ended up getting more involved in Flight Bridge Ed, whatever. And then I don't think it was my first one, but that was really one of my only few like solo Flight Bridge Ed podcasts that I did. Was I got to close it out. I was on when we started, and I was excuse me, I was on when we finally closed out the study with the abstract release. So, and at the time, and this is what I was just talking over to, I had not had a chance to even read the paper yet.
Yeah.
But when the abstract came out, it was being touted as like, we finally got something for TBI. Like 2 grams, man. Do it sooner than later, man. This is like a real thing. And now you just shot all my hopes down. The paper didn't show that at all.
Well, that's not true. It kind of did.
Like there was an interesting signal. Was there a signal?
There was definitely a signal.
Okay.
Was definitely a signal.
Good.
But so, and this paper has like 93 authors on it, many of whom we know. I was just looking through it. Susan Rowell. I don't know if you know Susan. She's one of our trauma surgeons in the region. She's the lead author. And then I'm looking through, there's like 53 authors, but Lori Morrison, RJ Frescone, Jason McMullen from Cincinnati, who's a great guy, good friend. And then Marty Schreiber from OHSU, the senior author. John Jew is one of the authors. And so it's in a small journal, the Journal of the American Medical Association.
Oh yeah, that's that fly by night jazz.
Yeah. Well, not like the regional journal that I often refer to as the New England Journal of Medicine. But in this study, and I know Jeff, you and Jeff already talked about it, right? And there'll be a really nice lighthouse project that really gets into the depth about this.
Yep, coming very soon.
I mean, I can't, it's pain in me to say something nice about Jeff, but I mean, like all of our Lighthouse Project podcasts, he's going to get into the nitty gritty, into what it's really about. You know, for our second shifters who are probably on their third drink by now, we can have
still.
We can have the kind of large vessel occlusion, the sort of 50,000 view. But you know, in this study, it was a randomized controlled trial. It was 2 doses of
it was a randomized placebo.
Yep.
Controlled, double-blinded.
Two different doses of TXA and a placebo.
Yep.
So when a patient had a potential head injury, they got like this magic bag, and it could either have nothing in it, just salt water, or it could have a gram of TXA or 2 grams of TXA.
Exactly.
And then when the patient got to the hospital, they got another magic bag, which either had nothing in it or continued TXA infusion for 8 hours. So it was blinded, and it was placebo, 1 gram bolus plus another gram as an infusion, right? And then or 2 grams as a bolus.
Yep.
And what was interesting, my take on it from what I read or what I was seeing is how the authors were reporting the data versus how they reported in the paper, is that they probably had to have, there were some concessions made in terms of, but ultimately they compared all of the TXA patients, whether it was the 1 gram or the 2 gram, to the placebo. And in that comparison, there was no difference in outcome if you got any TXA versus placebo. And that, unfortunately, that's the conclusion of the paper. Among patients with moderate to severe TBI, out of hospital tranexamic acid administration within 2 hours of injury compared with placebo did not significantly improve 6-month neurologic outcome, as measured by the Glasgow Outcome Scale Extended. Meanwhile, we've just added TXA to our head injury protocol.
I know. I got to be honest with you. I was super disappointed to find out that, number one, that there was not a damn forest plot. Like, I looked all over that paper. It was not forest plot. Because I would have liked to have seen how that sort of made its way through. I think that would have been interesting. But yeah, I'm super disappointed in this. I thought we finally had a thing, and I had a bit of a vested interest. I worked pretty much hand in hand with Dr. Mohammed Daya, and he and I together through ROC, we created the entire pre-hospital training piece to this whole thing. So all over North America, we're the ones that did the training for everybody. I personally trained all 300 of our paramedics when I was at AMR at the time. I was all in, and I'm just super disappointed to see it kind of turn out like this. It's a bummer.
Yeah, it is. And what I think we basically, so this is the problem, right? So now,
it's always,
and I think some of our ROC trials probably, one of the problems with some of, because if you look at our ROC trials in general, they've mostly been negative studies.
Indeed.
And yet we always take stuff out of there. And I think that part of the problem is that when you take all the patients and that might have a thing, that you probably are ending up with too many patients. This is going to sound really weird, where no matter what you did, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, Rock by Design was looking at critically ill people, right? I mean, so
right. But if you have patients if you have a patient that's going to survive and you give them TXA, they're still going to survive. Right. And if you have a patient who GCS3 has a giant epidural pushing everything over, TXA is not going to help that person.
No, for sure.
And so when you start looking at the patients kind of in between, that's where the signal really pops up.
Yeah.
But to fully acknowledge the critics, is it data dredging at that point?
I don't know.
I do think here's one thing that I think is really weird. I think that there's a huge difference between decisions you make up front, a priori, and decisions that and then numbers that pop up later as a result of running like 1,000 analyses. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The study was designed to look at 3 different groups, right? It was designed to look at.
You had placebo, 1 gram, 2 gram.
1 milligram bolus and 2 milligram bolus. And how they ended up having to lump the 1 milligram bolus and the 2 milligram bolus together in the overall analysis.
Not enough patients?
Seems to be odd to me. And so that's the piece that doesn't quite make sense to me. And then there's a Dave Cohn and Dan Spate wrote a nice editorial about it, basically talking about some of the challenges in doing this study, and that it provides really important data, and I kind of pointing out that there is probably a group of TBI patients that benefits. Now, the other thing to take out of this is that if you look at crash 2, crash 3, the risk from TXA is pretty small, and that risk that showed in this paper too. The only kind of thing that was weird is that there was a statistically significantly higher risk of seizure in the TXA group, but there was not a greater risk of venous thromboembolism, MI, but there was in the TXA bolus group had a statistically higher significantly higher number of seizures, 5% versus 2%. I don't know what that means by itself, because none of the other sort of bad outcomes like death were worse in that group, or MI, PE, stroke, DVT. So I think that this idea that TXA is a pretty safe intervention, I think, persisted in this study.
Yeah.
But it was really a little sad when the paper came out and I read it. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, so what is your thoughts on, what are we going to keep that in our protocols? I mean, I know it's added, right? We had the protocol page already done, but does this study change what we're going to do, or is there enough?
I don't think so. I think both of our trauma centers are believers in TXA for the head injured patients. I mean, the lead author was from one of our trauma centers. The senior author was the other person. Yeah, and they feel pretty strongly that they feel pretty strongly that it works. I think this paper had come out. You weren't on our last protocol committee meeting because of the fires. But we talked about the paper, and we talked about the sort of, for lack of a better word, disappointing nature of it, and decided to keep it in for now. But it's a great example of working with our trauma centers on it because they believe in it too.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how things go. So,
yep,
cool, awesome. Well, that's pretty much all I got on my schedule, buddy. What about you? Anything else to add before we jump on out of here?
No, man. I think we covered a lot.
I think we did. It almost feels like we did 2 podcasts at one time.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, but I think if there's going to be a Lighthouse project that comes out that looks at this topic for TXA.
Yep. So keep your eyes out for the video. Keep your ears out for the podcast. Some people like to watch and some people like to listen. So we're just making those options available for people. So there'll be a video probably released first, would be my guess, and then the audio will follow the next few days or so. So keep an eye out for it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as we wrap this up, I mean, we talked about this at the beginning, but I just one more time want to just say that, for Craig Manifold's family and those agencies that he works with, our condolences. We feel your pain. And so I just want to make sure that they hear that again from us.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great way to end this episode. So, on behalf of Dr. Sani, Mike Verkest, you've been listening to the Second Shift podcast, a proud member of the Flight Bridge Ed Podcast Network and
a Fire Dog production.
Take care, guys. We will talk to you soon.